Hi, this is Don King,
And I'm Mark Fuentes.
and welcome to another episode of Mobile Talk.
Don, we've been talking about in a prior episode about the integration of work and personal information, pictures, email, those kinds of things. And we tackled in an earlier episode the concept of how it's getting difficult to keep work and personal stuff separate,
Mhm.
and whether or not it was even possible. And I want to explore a little bit more about the other things that we had come up with. We said, one was, is it possible? Two is, should you keep them separate or let them integrate? And the third was,
How?
help me out with the third.
Yeah, how can we do it?
How can we do
Yeah,
it?
I mean, these last two are assuming that it's even possible.
Right, right. And I think we've established that maybe it is possible, but you need to have a certain amount of effort and maybe
It's
perhaps
hard.
technological prowess.
It's hard.
Uh, so let's look at, should we? Is there some kind of benefit, do you think, to letting all that stuff integrate together and become kind of merged, if you will?
Well, I guess like most things, there's advantages, there's disadvantages. I mean, it's certainly not limited to academics. It's something that's happening to our whole society. I would say tending towards worldwide. What's the latest figure I've seen? Roughly 7 billion people on the planet, I think, right?
That's correct. Yes.
And the latest figure that I have seen is that there's 3 billion cell phones out there.
Okay, so that's
We're
almost one for every two people. Yeah.
yeah, and given that some people do have more than one device,
Right.
but on the other hand, in a lot of third world countries, they skipped right over landline because that was just technology that was beyond their cultural, for lack of a better term, abilities at the time. But the cell phones they were able to get individually, so to speak, and they're the lifeline for a lot of folks. So we're going to see more and more of this. It's not limited just to America. It's certainly not limited just to academics.
Right.
On the other hand, um, there's certainly something lost there. I mean, let's face it, and folks listening to us talk here, taking part in the conversation. By the way, get your own cup of coffee and join us here. Um, I don't know when you might be watching this. Well, Mark and I are having this conversation at 8:30 at night. You're seeing a recording, which is why I'm wearing the same shirt that you saw in the last episode. We're doing 3 or 4 episodes at a time. But this is outside of what most people would consider normal work hours. Now, again, academics have never followed a 9 to 5 schedule.
No, and there seems to be a perception that academics, follow a 10:45 until 2 p.m. schedule, and
Yeah.
and that's just not true. But we do put in our share of hours, but
I'm averaging, I think, about 65 to 70 hours a week between
and I don't
grading
keep
and
track because it would be depressing.
yeah, yeah.
So,
But
so I kind of
aside from doing away with the stereotype, a lot of folks think the only time we're working is when we're in class. There's a lot of outside of class stuff. There's a lot of weekend work. That's always been true of academia. But this is something different. This is the email that where you're constantly connected, constantly available. There's no
and
downtime.
and we're kind of getting into another topic a little bit, but it's true. I mean, if someone sends me a document over email and I'm out somewhere with the kids, what do you think? I mean, oh look, I have an email.
Mm-hmm.
Look, I have an email. Let me open. Oh, it's a document. Let me open it and read it while I'm sitting there. And that, my daughter has at times told me, Dad, would you put the thing down and talk to me?
It's
And
ironic, isn't it?
and it's unusual because usually she has that cell phone, basically glued to her hand. Um, and but and a lot of times I have to tell her, honey, talk to me,
Yeah, yeah,
but yet I'm doing it too.
yeah.
Um, and it's and and there should there be that line. I mean, it used to be before this was capable of anything other than making a phone call, and before this existed at all. Um, if someone sent an email, they got a response when I got back to the office.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have high-speed internet at home. I didn't have any internet at home. And then when we did, we had the modem.
Yeah, I remember those.
So, the so should we just allow this whole integration to happen? Should we? What would be the benefit of just letting everything from work, personal, all that, just let my phone take it all and bundle it all up and done?
Yeah. Well, and I think there are certain realistic advantages for me to be able to do some stuff from home, like just what we're doing right now.
Right.
Yeah, it's 8:30 at night. It's outside of normal work hours. On the other hand, if we were trying to do this and had to use equipment at the college, um, my time would be different at home. At least this way, when we wrap up, I can go straight into the kitchen and get something to eat. If an emergency comes up here at the house, we can interrupt. I'm
Right.
not an hour's drive away or whatever. So I think there is some advantage to being able to blend some. But I think for very practical reasons, we also need to keep things separate. I mean, you know that I've got two Gmail accounts. There's one that's for my personal stuff, and then there's one that I use for college stuff when we need to use Google type stuff.
Right. And I have the same thing. I
Yeah,
have the original account, and Google somehow knows it because it lists them both. Says
yeah,
which one do you want to log into, and
they're
you
both
pick one.
listed there, but at least they do let you keep them separate. And we're still trying to figure out kind of how the Office 365 stuff is going to work like that.
Yeah.
So that gets
My,
into the how to, but the should. Yeah, I think that, and even when you get into things like social media, I tend to use Facebook, for example, mostly for connecting with friends. But I do have a page on Facebook, which is what I use for professional activity. On the other hand, our mutual friend and colleague, Rachel Glazner, she's not been on Facebook much until recently. She's been on Facebook a lot in the last couple of months, but she's pretty explicit that she's using Facebook for professional activities. She's not using it for socializing, and I think that's one way of keeping things separate.
and then has she made the conscious decision to use those resources? I know she does a lot of things with Twitter
Mm-hmm.
and her, professionally also. Um, so has she made a conscious effort? I'm not using these things for personal at all.
Mm-hmm.
I'm using them for, professional for the students in the classroom and whatnot. So, but has that decision eliminated her ability to use it for personal stuff?
Well, and that's a good question. I'll turn to two other friends who are going to remain nameless for reasons that will be obvious. One of those friends has set up two Facebook accounts. Now that's perfectly within terms of service for Twitter. It's perfectly within terms of service for Google. It is not within the terms of service for Facebook. Facebook wants you to have one identity. So she's in technical violation of Facebook's terms of service. And if they figure it out, she's not going to go to jail or be fined or anything like that, but they'll shut down one of the accounts. And so but a lot of people do that. They'll set
Now,
up a fictitious account in order to keep things kind of separate. Then
now,
there's
how do you
another
know that?
one, and just
How do
just
you,
before I forget here, there's
okay.
another one that set up Facebook to use it as a professional activity kind of thing, and yet in connecting with her, I was just kind of looking at her timeline and all that kind of stuff, and I stumbled across photos of her wedding. Now that's not professional activity kind of stuff, and I'm not
Right.
saying she shouldn't have done that. I'm saying that maybe there's a little bit of creep there, where you intend to use it just for professional, and then you share some jokes, and then it starts getting a little personal stuff in there, and suddenly, it's the way the camel gets inside the tent.
So, how do you know that it's a violation of Facebook's terms of service?
I do know a couple of people who have gotten caught doing that sort of thing. So, just from friends' experiences.
Okay.
And it's not too hard to find on the internet if you just, look around for, can you have multiple Facebook accounts? You'll find that kind of information out there.
Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah. And I mean, folks, I'm not talking about Mark. Okay, Mark only has one account.
I have one Facebook account that I don't use. So.
Yeah. And I mean, I've handled it by having my Facebook account, which is mostly for friends, and then I make extensive use of groups. Like, I have some interest in politics, for example, but I really don't want to get into the general discussion of politics on Facebook. So I've got a group of friends that I know are interested, have similar views, and if I post something about that, it just goes to that group of friends. And then I've got a page that is for my professional speaking activity. So it's like I'm maintaining different roles in Facebook as opposed to different identities.
And I don't know if the average user is that savvy with how Facebook works. I know I wouldn't know how to do that. I know nothing about Twitter. I have a LinkedIn account I really don't use.
Well, and most people, I think, with LinkedIn, they post their resumes. They may look at some professional interest groups for discussion, but it's not truly a social media or social medium the way that Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And I technically have an Instagram account, but I never use it.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, like I said, I don't know how to use any of that stuff. And evidently, Instagram is the thing. Is that right? Twitter's not the thing anymore.
Twitter is not the thing anymore. Twitter is it's very much influential among a smaller group of people, but they're facing business challenges because they're not growing. And among young people, apparently, it's very much passé. I mean, let's face it, so is Facebook. Instagram and Snapchat seems to be their social media of choice.
And there's evidently some issues with, and again, I don't, I don't know a lot about this, but evidently there's some issues with Snapchat where you send something and you can't track it, or you can't delete it, or I don't know.
But it's not as private as they assume that it is. So
something. And I tell my kids, especially my younger daughter, be really careful of what you. I mean, once you put something out there, it's out there forever. And, the whole thing. But so, what about disadvantages? What do you see as disadvantages of letting all these things integrate together, your work and your personal stuff and whatnot?
Well, we've kind of been talking about that. If there's no boundaries, I mean, we know from lots of personal development material, if you don't have boundaries, you're going to go nuts.
And I wonder if there are any legal issues, especially, if something, if let's say somebody has something inappropriate on their phone that's their personal thing, and it gets uploaded to work-related things, somebody gets a hold of it or whatever.
I can tell you two examples real quick that go right to what you're talking about. One, somebody who should have been caught anyway. So, we're certainly not excusing this behavior. But we talked in the last episode, and I'm going to get a prop out here, my cell phone here. There it is. I've got mine set up to where when I take a picture with this phone, that a copy of the picture is automatically saved to Flickr, which is Yahoo's photo storage service. So the news story is that this person forgot that that was set up. They took some inappropriate pictures of underage children. In other words,
Jeez.
they were involved in some activity they definitely should not have been involved in.
Right.
And because it got instantly uploaded to their Flickr account, and their Flickr account was viewable by other people, then they got arrested, and obviously they should have been.
Should have
Okay,
been, yeah.
but still, that's just an indication of how the blending of things and lack of security and all that can expose you in ways that you don't intend to be exposed. And the second one, let me see, it's escaping me right now. I should have written it down. It'll come back to me later.
Okay. So, yeah, I don't know what the solution is, and I don't know how much integration we should have. I know that anything, student record wise, has legal implications. So
Mm-hmm.
if I'm working on something student related and it gets downloaded to my cell phone and it goes somewhere else after that, that could be a huge problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I'm still, and I don't have, like I said, I don't have an answer to how much integration is okay and what's not, but there's got to be some kind of balance for all of this.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, I think we can, because we're a little longer than we usually are. Just
Okay.
to draw this together, I think we're saying, the first episode in this little series, we were talking about, is it possible? And I think we've established, yeah, it's possible, but it's hard. Maybe a whole other question is it worth it? Okay, which kind of ties into the should we. I would tend to say, yeah, we should. We should keep it separate, um, at least for the feeling of being in control, of having some choice over it. I don't want to share everything with everybody. That's why I have the group for the politics, the group for, gosh, what else is it? Maybe photography. Not everybody's into photography. I just want to have some control over where the stuff goes. So the next question, and what we'll be talking about in our next episode, not that we're going to have any definitive answers, because we're not tech experts, but some insights in how do you do it? How do you keep things separate? And so maybe we
Sounds
can
good.
have some non-techy but practical insights into that on our next episode. So in the
Okay.
meantime, folks listening to this on iTunes, you already know where to find us. We also have the audio version that goes up on our blog. The best place to keep track of what's going on with the Mobile Fellows at Pellissippi State is probably our blog, which you can find at blogs.pstcc.edu/mobilefellows. You can also follow us on Twitter at ps_mobs. And you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/psmobs. No underscore in that one. We would like for you to converse with us and let us know what you think about the things that we're talking about. There's places to make comments in just about all of those places except for iTunes. And you can always drop an email to dking@pstcc.edu. Come explore with us and help us figure out what works and what doesn't work in mobile and emerging technology. We will see you or talk to you, whichever version you're in, the next time that we're on. Watch for us again online.